So sometimes when people hear that I have been teaching, especially the CMP program, preparing people for the CMP test for 20 years, they think, oh my gosh, is she still teaching the same stuff the same way she did 20 years ago? The answer is no. And I wanted to share with you today some of the things I do to try to become a better educator and create a better class every time I teach the CMP program. So a couple of different things have happened over the years. First, in terms of content, if you go back 20 years, goals and objectives were still part of the program, but so much has changed in those 20 years. The books have evolved. I have every book since 1996 when I took the exam. The books have evolved. The exam has evolved in content. And so therefore I find it's very important for me to stay current on where the exam is. So I've done a lot of things over the years to make sure that I did. For one thing, there's a conclave, which is a form of a conference or a meeting held every year for CMPs only. So many years out of the past 20 years I have gone. For many years I was able to help write the initial stages of questions on the exam, and so that gave me a good understanding as to how the questions are written. Not necessarily the material, and I certainly can't and wouldn't share that with you, what the questions were, but understanding how a question is put together. So that has helped me a lot in terms of how I teach and the content in the class. Also, I would go to learn the changes that have been made in the exam itself. What were they doing differently? What were they looking to do differently in the future? And a lot of that comes from it's no longer a memorization exam, it is a conceptual, strategic and conceptual exam. So I've worked really hard to try to update both how I teach and my material around it. Not only that, but my class is never exactly the same any two times, even if you took it a week apart. It flows depending on who's in the class and what questions they answer. Some things I may emphasize more or bring up in one class and not in the other. But I'm also always going through my notes and frequently go through the books again and read and reread to see if there's something that I should be adding or changing or teaching in a different way. I always feel if it's something I'm not grasping when I'm thinking about it or reading, I need to be teaching it better, because if I don't get it, my class is certainly not going to get it. Another interesting thing that's helped me become a better educator, teacher, presenter as a whole is the opportunity to have people in my class where English was not their first language. The official language of the CMP exam and the books is Global English. And so in the early years, I would occasionally have someone from a different country than where I was teaching, not from North America, or maybe from North America, but speaking a different language. But what was really good for me, because I became aware when those people were in my class, I remember the first person, and I realized when she asked a couple questions that I was using American colloquialisms, American slang, expressions that definitely were not global. But the real wake-up call came when I had the opportunity to be hired by a European hotel company and work in the Caribbean and teach a class of 25 people, 24 of whom English was not their first language. In fact, there were some people who spoke 4 languages in that class. But for me to go and teach a 3-day class and make sure that I communicated the content, the messages, everything I wanted to say in a way they could understand. The responsibility was on me, the sender, not them, the listener. So again, it forced me to think very strongly about the choices of words and the examples I gave. And again, that was really hit home when in 2016, 17, and 18, I had the opportunity and great pleasure to teach in Bangkok and have classes that were predominantly from Thailand, some from Malaysia, but everyone there forced me to be a better teacher so I could make sure that they understood the terms, the language I was using, the examples, and the content. So that's how I work on becoming a better educator and creating better content for every class that I teach.